Hello fellow bike people! Today I want to talk to you about something that's really important to me. If you have an old bike that you're not using, you should donate it. Not to me, don't worry, I'm not trying to take away your bike or anything. But you should donate the bike to charity, or at least somebody who is in genuine need of a bicycle. But that's been the whole point of this video series since I started the season 2, if you want to call it that, is I've been trying to promote donating bikes to charity and build bikes to donate. Up till this point I've been kind of building up the collection, and now that it's starting to get warm, the bikes are actually in demand again and the charities are starting to get back up and running, so I'm actually able to start donating the bikes, which is great. It's the best feeling. Now, talking about it being the best feeling, it's something I've been thinking about for quite a while but haven't really been able to act on until recently. Working at Cycle Path, we always did the Tour de Mississauga, which was essentially a non-profit tour run by the city just to introduce people to cycling and let them see the sights. It was recently taken over by, I think it was Epic Tours or some company like that, but still runs essentially the same. And we would go and offer free service for all of the people riding bikes there, and it always felt great giving back to the community like that and not expecting money for it. Now, since the end of 2019, obviously everything's gotten more intense, more interesting, don't know how you want to put it, but one of the results is bikes are in absolutely massive demand, and bike charities are popping up everywhere, and they're really doing good stuff to support the communities. I've mentioned a few of them in previous videos, so places like Community Bike Shop and Bike Pirates, those are more established, like non-profit bike shops. But then places like Peel Multicultural Council and their Mississauga Cycles program, they focus on getting bikes to new immigrants as a method of transportation because Mississauga and, Canada in general is really expensive to live in. And it can be hard to just show up here and be mobile right away, and bikes are key to a lot of people for being able to get around the city. Now, they're still in the process of starting up again for the year, so I haven't actually got anything to them yet, specifically. But I want to talk to you about 8 bikes that I donated, and I want to tell you why they're relevant and why you should feel good for doing the same thing if you choose to donate your own bike. So, the first 4, they went to a family up in Brampton that just needed bikes to be able to get around and spend time outdoors together. So no, it's not donating them to a charity, they're actually family friends of Brianna's. But they needed bikes, and that's what's important. It doesn't matter if they're family friends, if they're close friends, if they're acquaintances, you can still donate a bike to them. If somebody needs a bike, you donate a bike to them. So it's a family of 4, the mother and the daughter are roughly the same height, the father and the son are roughly the same height. So I essentially had to get 4 bikes, 2 of each size. An adult small or extra small, and then an adult's medium or large. So the first thing, you remember that black BMX from the last episode? Well, I put a few more finishing touches on that, and I actually traded that to Cycle Path for one of the used bikes that Brian had for sale there, and I donated that bike to the family. It is this silver Raleigh 24-inch. Pretty average looking bike, but it's in really good shape, and it's fairly comfortable all things considered, so it should last a relatively long time, and good bike for now. I gotta say, I'm totally okay with the idea of trading the bike that I built to donate to charity to Cycle Path for another bike to donate to charity, because none of these bikes are super expensive. We're not talking like carbon fiber, hydraulic brakes, electronic shifting, like fancy things or anything like that. No, we're talking just normal everyday bikes, and realistically, trading one for one, that's still one bike got donated to charity, so I'm totally happy with that. And the second bike I gave them was the same size technically, maybe a little bit taller, so I think that one went to the mom who was slightly taller than the daughter. And it's this, a red Super Cycle 24-inch. Again, super basic bike, but it's in really good shape, it's tuned to perfection, and it should last a good long time. This one, there's literally no rust on it. If you told me this had come from Canadian Tire like a week ago, I'd believe you. As for the father and the son, they both needed adult medium or adult large size bikes. So we tried a couple in the collection and found ones that fit perfect, and for the son it was this. It's a hyper mountain bike, I think it came from Walmart. It's got 27.5-inch wheels and it's big enough for a taller rider. Really basic mountain bike, not great for doing any heavy trail riding, but for pedaling around the city, jumping down some curbs, this thing will be fun for a while. And the last bike, if you've been watching this series, you'll remember this bike. This one is from the first episode of Season 2 when I started trying to donate bikes to charity or build up a collection to donate. This Raleigh is in amazing shape. It runs like new, it looks like brand new. Just like the red and silver bikes I showed you earlier, it's in pretty much perfect shape. Now admittedly, there are a few spots of rust on this one if you look really closely, but barely anything worth considering. And this bike, with Shimano parts on it, an aluminum frame, and pretty reasonable geometry for just day-to-day riding, I'd say it's actually a solid bike. This is something that I would ride myself if I needed something that I would want to lock up somewhere and not be worried about it getting stolen, but still able to enjoy the ride before I got there, you know? So I set all the bikes up at Cycle Path. We did curbside pickup, all contactless and everything. It was perfect. And when they got home, they sent me a message thanking me, and the next day, they sent me a picture of them all riding the bikes together. And this is what it's about. This is why donating bikes is awesome. Just knowing you're able to spread that joy of riding bikes to other people. And that's 4 people that really hadn't been able to get out and ride bikes together in a very long time, and now they're able to do that and actually enjoy the outdoors. And right now, that's really important. Now, when they picked those bikes up, they actually gave me their old bikes. 2 of them were kiddie bikes that I just took some parts that I needed off of and just scrapped the frames because they were in pretty rough shape. But one of them was a nice adult bike. It was a silver Raleigh, and I'm going to show you a bit more on that one in a little bit. So now I want to talk to you about the other place I donated 4 bikes. Janice Lowe is a high school teacher in Malton, which is in the northeast part of Mississauga. Now she runs something called the GLE Movement, and they do amazing things, including working with bikes. Now if you look at their social media, their Instagram page, GLE stands for Grow, Lead, Excel, which honestly, looking at what they do, seems a perfectly accurate description. Basically, the GLE movement is about youth advocacy and education and just trying to make a better world, a better community for everybody. Now, she does handle some much more important topics than bicycles, I will admit, but the bikes are still really important. Now, as I mentioned earlier, living in Mississauga is really expensive, so transportation can be hard for anybody, regardless of how much family income you have. So bikes are a big deal, especially for students. Now, even once you have access to a car, bikes can still give you a lot of opportunities and freedom that cars don't. There's much less strict regulations around it. You don't need a license, you don't need insurance. You do have to follow the road rules, but there's lots of separate bike lanes and pathways where you can essentially ride freely. It's a totally different experience, and getting from A to B like that is not only much more fun than driving in some cases, but also totally free, which is a big deal. So the first bike I sent her way was that silver Raleigh from earlier. It looked a little rough on the surface when I first got it, but really it just needed a good tune-up, a few parts here and there, and it's running great. It's in nearly new condition with a few cosmetic blemishes here and there, but it's a great bike, it's in good shape. It's from back when Raleigh was an actual bike shop brand name, not a department store brand. Now, that is complicated because there is Raleigh bikes that are really good quality still, but that's a topic for a whole other video. Raleigh's a very complicated company, but suffice it to say, this is a good Raleigh. Next we're going to talk about this Giant. Very similar to that Raleigh. This one's a little bit higher end, but from around the same era, and it's a very nice bike. The frame is in great shape, the gears and brakes are in good shape, the suspension still works, which is amazing for bikes of that vintage. And it's great, it even has like a nice ride feel to it, the brakes are nice and snappy, and one of my favorite parts is the last owner of that bike upgraded the tires to those awesome slicks. They might look worn out from a distance, but no, they're not actually worn out. They're just a road conversion for the mountain bike. So these things on concrete, this is going to be one fast bike. Last of the mountain bikes before we get to one that holds a special place in my heart. This bike, honestly, I had to pick out one bike to be the worst of all the bikes that I donated that was barely up to the standard of being donatable. It would be this CCM Ice. So, it's a Canadian Tire bike. And it's an old one, and it's really rusty. There's a lot of downsides to it, and much like the BMX bike that I featured in the last episode, I would say unless you have a lot of spare parts lying around, it's not worth the time and effort or the money to fix up a bike like that. However, I got all the spare parts lying around. So with some fresh cables, some fresh tires, fresher tires, a fresh chain, and a good solid tune-up, yeah, this thing works really nicely. The only thing I couldn't fix is the seat post is completely stuck where it is. I used the vise, I applied heat to it, I used like the freezing sprays and everything. It's not moving. So whoever rides that bike is going to have to be somebody who fits it with the seat where it is now. But other than that, this bike does have some benefits. It is not likely to be a theft target given how it looks, and honestly it rides better than it looks like it should. Definitely not the best of the bikes that I donated this time, but still acceptable. And now, oh, this one, the Eastern Element. I love this bike so much. I almost feel bad parting with it, but I got it to donate in the first place. That's what it came to me to do. It's just fulfilling its duty. So when I got this bike, it was a complete mess, and I scrounged around for parts, making it as good of a build as I could. At the moment, it's set up, I would call it a dirt jump style build. It's got the knobbier tires, it's got the straight cable brake, it's got the metal pedals, it's a pretty tall setup. Now that said, it's got the nice low seat and the two pegs, so it would also work decent as a park bike. But I think riding this bike, it would be best in a dirt jump kind of setting. Now I mentioned it in a previous episode, but the brake mounts on this bike are actually really tricky to work with. Unless you know the trick for getting them hooked up, there's no brake mounts that are directly compatible with this frame. If you watch the older episode of Project Used Bikes, you'll see the hack of how to do it. But now that that's set up, the bike rides great. It's even got a lot of really good custom parts on there, like the Odyssey Evo 2 brakes. Whoever rides this bike, I really hope they at least try some real BMX riding instead of just pedaling it around as a bike that looks cool. I mean, don't get me wrong, it would work great for that too. It would be super reliable, it would look amazing, it would turn heads, but I think they would get the most out of this bike if they were to take it to, say, Iceland Skate Park or a dirt jump set nearby and just enjoy what the bike is meant to do. Because it's a full chromoly BMX. It's pretty much a pro level build from around the 2010 era. So now that I've donated that whole first batch of bikes, now I gotta start building up another batch. Probably more to go to GLE, and definitely some to go to Mississauga Cycles and Peel Multicultural Council. Once it's safer to do so in the future, then I plan to go out to Peterborough and finally donate a bike to the Peterborough Community Bike Shop. That's been my goal for so long, but I haven't been able to do it. It's really sad. But soon, soon. Until the next time, ride your bike, and if you're not riding it, donate it to someone who will, because all bikes will be appreciated by somebody.